Star Wars only, I don't know what the fuck your problem is.
The Mandalorian Chapter 4, The Sanctuary. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know how to even begin this review. It reminded me of when I was a young lad watching the Clone Wars, because that's basically what this episode was. I really don't even know if I should make a spoiler talk for this episode review, because there wasn't too many spoilers in this. I mean, it was really a very generic style episode of what you would get with a Saturday morning cartoon, which, hey, you know, if that's the genre we're going for, who am I to say we shouldn't be doing that? But if we're spending $10 to $15 million per episode like we're doing for this season, my question on this one is, well, where's the story? I mean, the story was just very generic. I'm pretty confident, actually I'm 110% confident, we've had the same story told in the Clone Wars show in the past, which is, there is a village that is in need of help to defend itself against these evil bad guys that, in this episode at least, happen to be some aliens. Pretty simple, pretty generic. Mandalorian's looking for a place to kind of lay low and chill after what happened in Episode 3 or Chapter 3, whatever you want to call them. And, I mean, that's really the whole premise of this episode. There's a little bit of romance in there, and hey, I'll admit, I like some romance from time to time. But this one did feel a little forced. It wasn't a natural romance. You didn't feel any chemistry at all. And I'll admit, for the first time in this show, I felt like there was some bad acting going on here. With the widow that the Mandalorian was I don't think he was interested in her, but she was obviously interested in him, and her child was, you know, I'm not going to critique a kid on acting. I think we've learned from The Phantom Menace, it's never a good idea to have child actors in Star Wars at such a young age. It's just a recipe for badness, in my opinion. Nothing against the kids, but hey, they're kids. I don't expect them to be great at acting, and I think that was one of the downfalls of this episode, is that the acting just wasn't on point. One of the highlights of this episode, though, and the best part, in my opinion, was Gina Carano, if I'm saying her name right. I used to watch her fight on the UFC. I really don't know why I can't get her name right, but she played Cara Dune, and I think she was probably the best aspect of this show. She comes in, has a little brawl with the Mandalorian. As a jiu-jitsu guy, I was kind of surprised. I was like, oh shit, she got a butterfly guard on this boy, threw him over. I mean, it was cool. It was cool to see her fight the Mandalorian because, like I said, she used to be a UFC fighter. I've been doing martial arts for about 11 years. I got a black belt in one style, working on a black belt in another style. So seeing someone like her, who is one of the few people on the planet where I'll admit they can kick my ass any fucking day of the week, it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny to see her go out there and do the UFC stuff that she used to do, but actually in the Star Wars universe. I just thought that was a little interesting. And her acting was really good. She played a really good badass type character. She's an ex-shock trooper for the Imperial Army, or whatever you want to call them. Had an interesting backstory. I'm hoping we get to see a little bit more of her. I think it'd be a little bit of a wasted character to just have her come in for a little bit. I felt like this was a very good introductory episode for that character, Cara Dune. And I like the action that went on in this episode. It's not like the action was a problem, but what was odd about it, in my opinion, is that the dialogue was a lot more interesting than the action. The subplot to everything of her talking to the Mandalorian, asking him questions that we as an audience, of course, want to know of, hey, what happens if you take off your helmet? Or why don't you take off your helmet? There's certain things about this episode that, of course, are interesting. But overall, it really did just feel like a little bit of a filler episode, which is odd because you compare that to episode 2 where he's just escaping the planet that he was on when he caught Baby Yoda, and that one was more of an adventure and was actually kind of fun to watch. I don't really think I had a lot of fun with this episode. I had moments of interest when they were talking, when he was talking to the widow, when he was talking to Cara Dune. I had a lot of interest in that. When he even went to the planet that he's on, it was kind of cool seeing him walk around in a restaurant, talking to the waitress and learning about the planet that he's visiting or trying to stay at and everything, to hide out for a little bit, and just seeing the little bit of characters. There was a Lothal cat there that was interesting to see because it interacted with Baby Yoda. A lot of really cute and adorable moments in this episode with Baby Yoda, with the other kids in the village and everything. It was a very sweet episode. Just in terms of engagement, I could see where people aren't going to like this one. I do feel like this is the weakest link out of the 4 episodes that we've gotten. Well, I mean, and to be fair, it's kind of hard. You look at the first 3 episodes, and I would argue they're damn near perfect. They're not perfect, but they're damn near perfect. And then you get to this one where it's like, hey, this is still a good episode. This is still a good show. This one's just lacking the engagement, the interesting characters. The only interesting characters in this one are the Mandalorian and Cara Dune. It's odd having the Mandalorian have this weird love interest when an uninteresting character, like the widow that he was talking to, and then her child and everything, it just kind of felt, at times, boring. And, of course, predictable, because you know they're not just going to slaughter the villagers at the end of it, even though that would be really, really dark and subverting expectations, if you will. But overall, yeah, this episode wasn't my personal cup of tea. I watched it twice just to, once as a fan and once as a critic to actually review it and see how I felt about it. But I don't really think I need to watch this episode ever again. The other three are far more interesting in my opinion. And I don't think this is a reflection of the director, Bryce Dallas Howard. She's a very good director, and her, of course, father is Ron Howard himself. But you can tell that this one was a little different. A lot of more POV shots in this one. There was a really cool shot of the Mandalorian, and it had the sun kind of reflecting off his armor, and you could see a little line at the bottom. I don't know if anyone caught that, but I thought that was a very cool shot of the Mandalorian. But overall, this episode was not my cup of tea. I didn't hate it, don't get me wrong. I liked it. I didn't love it like I have the past 3 episodes of The Mandalorian. If I had to give it a score, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. I feel like the really big downfall for this was the story, was just the whole plot of everything, of him coming to this planet and trying to find a place to hide out, and he's got to defend these villagers against these evil aliens. It's generic, it's an easy plot to follow, it's not overly complex, but in turn, that also makes it a less interesting episode to watch because you kind of already know how the story is going to end. The more interesting part of it does happen in the final 5 to 6 minutes, and it doesn't make the entire journey feel pointless up to this point, but it's just kind of like, oh, well, okay, that could have happened in the first 5 minutes, and we could have gone off to another planet and had a lot more of an interesting adventure, at least in my eyes. I liked meeting Cara Dune, but I felt like overall this episode was not the episode that a lot of fans are going to enjoy and like. It's not a reflection on Bryce Dallas Howard's directing. I think it's more of a reflection on the story that Jon Favreau wrote for this episode. I'm hoping the next episode is a lot better. I'm pretty confident it will be because we're going to a new place and we're going to explore something different. The sets in this episode were great. The characters overall, like Cara Dune, like the Mandalorian, are still interesting, but it was just the side characters that I felt like were extremely lacking in this one. But that's just my cup of tea. I'd give this one a 7 out of 10. I'd like to hear your thoughts on Star Wars The Mandalorian Chapter 4, The Sanctuary. What did you think about it? Did you like it? Did you not? I'm not going to do a spoiler talk for this one because, we already kind of covered a little bit of them in this one. And overall, there really wasn't any spoilers in this one. It was just a normal episode of a Star Wars show that I would expect to see the same kind of story in Star Wars The Clone Wars like we have, and probably even in Star Wars Rebels. So, too generic for my taste, 7 out of 10 like I said, but didn't hate it, liked it enough, but wasn't a big fan. Tell me your thoughts below. I'm Star Wars only. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see y'all next time, and may the Force be with you, always.